you might remember the name Shiloh Hendrix. She went viral in April for repeatedly calling a 5-year-old child a racial slur, getting into a verbal altercation with a man who was recording her. Hendrix alleged the child was going through her things, so it was at a playground.
Now, Hendrix faces 3 counts of disorderly conduct, which can result in a 90-day prison sentence and or a $1,000 fine. Rochester's KTTC was the first to report the news. The legal complaint, which a district court judge still needs to review and approve, reads in part, quote, Hendrix wrongfully and unlawfully engaged in offensive, obscene, abusive, boisterous or noisy conduct, or in offensive, obscene or abusive language that would reasonably tend to arouse alarm, anger or resentment in others.
As of Tuesday, Hendrix has raised about $800,000 on Give, Send, Go, largely in part due to an online campaign for her support. Hendrix said she faced harassment and that her private information had been leaked, which prompted her to ask for money.
Rochester's Mayor, Kim Norton, said in part in a statement that this incident deeply affected the city's communities of colour and caused real turmoil. Norton also said she acknowledges the lasting impact of the incident, not just locally, but at the state and national level. Rochester's NAACP chapter said in a May statement, quote, this was not simply offensive behaviour. It was an intentional, racist, threatening, hateful and verbal attack against a child, and it must be treated as such.
Meanwhile, conservative commentator Matt Walsh reacted to the news on X, writing, this is why I have no patience for the free speech argument for burning the American flag. We don't have free speech in this country. If they're going to throw people in jail for saying a bad word, then yes, I want you thrown in jail for desecrating my flag. We aren't playing by 2 different sets of rules anymore. College professor Wilford Riley also chimed in, writing, serious question, what's the difference between this Indian truck driver petition and the Shiloh Hendrix and Carmelo Anthony GoFundMes? I think all this sort of thing should be discouraged and possibly banned online, by the way, but we have heard for years now that that is regime censorship, so the dueling petitions exist. Yeah, lots here. This is a big topic of conversation in conservative social media. I don't know if we addressed it. We did talk about this case on Rising. I'm not sure if you and I talked about it. It might have been with somebody else.
Yeah.
So what happened is there was a playground, this incident from a couple weeks ago. This woman, white woman, Shiloh Hendrix, is videotaped yelling at this kid. She does use a racial slur about him. She says that he was going through her purse. This person puts it online, the video of it. She then gets, death threats and hate. She has to move because of the threats against her, so she starts a GoFundMe, or on whatever platform it is, not GoFundMe, a GoFundMe equivalent platform, and gets a lot of money. My take on this was that at every instance, I think there's something to be said for if you're escalating, you're in the wrong, and that every aspect of this involved escalation that was bad on all parts. So the kid shouldn't have gone through her stuff. She certainly should not have yelled at him and engaged in racial language. Guy honestly should not have recorded it and shouldn't have put it on social media, and people harassing her shouldn't have done that, because even though she did a bad thing, that doesn't mean she should get death threats. And she shouldn't have asked for money because of it. That was pretty gross too. So it was all bad and all wrong. We're talking about it again because there's a criminal referral. So she's not being prosecuted, but she might be. They've asked a judge basically to look at this. I don't know how this judge will conclude. We just read what that statute is. That statute to me sounds actually problematic and maybe inconsistent with the First Amendment. There are, of course, some free speech exceptions, which we're discussing in context with flag burning. So that's why this is coming up again, too. I defended the right to burn the flag yesterday. That's been litigated by the Supreme Court. But people on the right are saying, well, okay, but then why is they're saying there's 2 standards because, but if you burn the pride flag or you can be prosecuted. As I pointed out yesterday, a lot of the things people were offering as a juxtaposition, well, that was burning somebody else's property, which is still illegal. However, there have been additional penalties because of hate crime statutes for, for doing something in an identity-based way that I'm totally against. I'm against all of that. I think what she did was very bad. I don't think she should be prosecuted for it, and if they try to prosecute it for it, I think an ACLU-style group honestly should defend her. I don't see why that's any different than when the Nazis marched down the street, and that gets defended too by, or at least used to at some point, by ACLU people. So I absolutely don't think she should be prosecuted, but I also don't think burning the American flag should be illegal.
So we have some common ground and some not common ground here. I mean, I take your point about the escalatory nature of the encounter, and I take your point about the particular statute let's sever that issue from this particular case for a second. It is certainly arguable whether that statute in her state is constitutional or not. It penalises offensive, obscene or abusive language that would reasonably tend to arouse alarm. That you could certainly argue about the constitutionality of that.
Yes.
But for the moment, the statute is on the books. And given that it is on the books, it seems clear to me that her behaviour meets those definitions. Of course, if she's prosecuted, she will have the chance to rebut that and to seek an acquittal. What I find pretty appalling in this case goes to something that I find kind of appalling about where we are right now as a society, which is the fact that this woman is filmed calling a very young black child by the most offensive and best known racial slur in the history of this country. And on a purportedly Christian crowdfunding site, $800,000 is raised to defend her. And some of the commentary on social media defending her is the most appalling stuff imaginable. So I just worry, I mean, we seem to have reached this point in this country where things like empathy and compassion are often ridiculed, and cruelty and prejudice are defended. And that's not the America that I thought I was living in. It's not the America that I conceived of when I was growing up in Ireland, which was just very different and more generous than that. And so I find that element of it completely appalling.
Well, people, including Matt Walsh, will say, I wouldn't have given a dollar to her because what she said is vile, but when thousands or however many people give money to the defense of that, Carmelo Anthony always gets brought up in context with this. Is a black teenager who I believe stabbed or killed white. I think it was track. It was some kind of college or high school athletics dispute, and it's unambiguous that he did it. And they raised tons and tons of money for his defense. And so it was juxtaposed with that. Again, it's the right is saying that all that empathy only goes in one direction or something, and so they're doing this to discourage people from. I find it gross when anybody tries to raise money for, unless you were if you were the victim of a hurricane, that's when you raise money, right?
Right.
Not this kind of thing. I still think you can talk about, obviously what she said was very, very bad. I'm not underplaying that, but I have a hard time saying, and the penalty for that should be. You have to move because you get so many death threats or bomb threats, and then you go to prison. And I do have to go back to the statute, because you could make that same argument for the flag burning statute was the law on the books in 48 states, and I don't think it should have been enforced. And they enforced it, and then the Supreme Court said it shouldn't exist in the first place. And also the argument they use to justify it is similar to the flag burning, because if you listen to what the mayor, the public official said. Right, we're talking about the harm this had to the community. This harmed black people in our community. Well, if you want to be really technical, what harmed people in the community was the video of it being published on social media. Nobody would have ever seen it or known. The community would have known this was said. So then could you discourage or block or sanction? I mean, this is what Trump said about the flag burning. That, well, we have to, it causes people react to the flag burning and cause riots and cause death. So that's why we're restricting it. It's the heckler's video. You could make that same argument, again, not for what she said, but for the release of the video, which I would absolutely never, would straightforward to me a censorship thing. No, I think it's bad. I think we should not walk around filming people all the time and trying to embarrass people even in their worst moments. But that would be an argument for suppressing the video, to my mind. It's the danger that these goes.
I mean, I do. Here's where the distinction that I would draw with the flag burning, which is different from the harm to the community argument. Flag burning, generally speaking, is not directed against an individual. It is, generally speaking, a symbolic protest against certain American policies or American mores that the protester has an objection to. In this case, an adult woman is shouting a gross racial slur at a child. There is an injury done to the child there in a way that there's not an injury done to any individual generally by the flag burning.
The injury being speech? I don't know.
The injury being racial abuse and harassment.
But it's speech. It's not. I mean, Enlightenment thinking draws a clear distinction that I think is meaningful between speech and an actual physical action. There was no violence. There was no hitting or slapping or kicking. It was just words. And the difference there to me is pretty fundamental. And also, you talk about, or you bring it, how the ugliness this kind of shows in us. I think at any point in American history, or just in the history of not just America, if you film people at like their worst moment, and I'm not trying to make excuses for, maybe she's as ugly as this moment at all times, but people get into road rage incidents in the parking lots and in the checkout lines of grocery stores. If you film someone they're having a really bad 5 minutes of their day, anyone, I'm not saying you'll catch them saying a racial epithet necessarily, but you will see ugliness, and I think that's not who we are, but is maybe because we now have the power to record that and capture it and show it and broadcast it to everyone, it's giving us a false impression.
Well, I mean, I take the point about filming people at their worst moments. And, there used to be an old saying something to the effect of, like, anyone who had every detail of their private life on the front page of the New York Times would not look good about it. So I take that point in the abstract. But my objection, or my perception of the ugliness here, is people looking at that video where she not only having thrown the racial slur at the child then repeats it to the guy videoing her, but that people watch an adult white woman racially abuse a child, defend racially abusing the child, and say, that's someone I want to give money to defend her. That seems to me a fundamentally ugly thing in our society. And it is not, in that case, defensible with your argument about someone in their worst moment in a road rage incident. That's people watching an instance of racial abuse and saying, we'd better rush and defend the abuser.
Well, again, because the abuser then suffered a significant harm in terms of had to move out of her home because of the level of violence threatened against her.
Which I wouldn't defend. I mean, obviously, she shouldn't be.
I don't know. Maybe I have a thick skin for these things. I mean, someone last week or the week before last yelled not a racial slur, but an identity-based slur that you don't say against me. I would not want that person to suffer any harm. I would not want them to lose their job. If they have a job, I would not want them to be prosecuted. Certainly, I wouldn't want them to be threatened. I just don't care because it's speech, and speech has no power to actually hurt you.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, it's the attitude. Well, that's the important point.
Well, and it's the attitude. It's the attitude our Supreme Court jurisprudence around the First Amendment takes.
Well, it is, and then, but then we'll see. We get back to the issue of whether the Minnesota statute will survive, because while you, of course, are free to take that view, that state-level statute polices speech in a different way.
Okay, my last point on this then, if they do, if this judge says that, yeah, let's go ahead and police this woman for this speech-related thing, and we'll see if this statute can stand up. The backlash from the right and their desire and their lust for banning flag burning and all of that kind of thing will be really visceral and really powerful and really bad. So for that reason, additionally, I hope they say, yeah, this is probably not consistent with the First Amendment. We won't do this.
I'm such a fan of free speech, I shall give you the last word on that topic. But it's an interesting topic for sure.
Yes, indeed.
Meanwhile, Vanity Fair staffers are reportedly threatening to quit. We'll tell you why next. We'll be right back.